Welcome once again to today's New Economy Fireside Chat series with me, Ashish. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Markets and Markets. And at M&M, we take great pride in transforming market intelligence into revenue impact for our clients. We focus our research on disruptive emerging technologies and futuristic trends, which could lead to significant shifts in your revenues in the coming decade or so. Now, through these new economy fireside chats, our objective is really to share actionable insights on new revenue growth opportunities emanating from disruptions in your ecosystem. And these insights are based on the client work that we have done as well as our own research. So our topic for today is good for business and for a social cause. And it's about plastic recycling, single-use plastic recycling. And I'm really pleased to welcome my guest, Neeraj Verma, who leads our chemical and resources practice. Neeraj, would you want to say a quick hello?
Thank you very much, Ashish, to inviting me to this discussion today. Really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neeraj. So, folks, let me just put things in context. And I think I came across this very interesting statistic. There's about 51 trillion plastic particles present in our oceans. And this is 500 times more than stars in the galaxy. So this statistic perhaps sums the need for why we need to talk about reducing and eliminating single-use plastic. And I think companies and countries are making great headways in this particular direction. And that's really what we'd like to talk about. So Neeraj, why don't we get started with setting the baseline? Tell us a bit about what, how much of the plastic market today is really recycled plastic. And also tell us a bit about, which are these harmful plastics that have the highest carbon footprint, which need to be prioritized from a recycling standpoint.
Yeah, Ashish. So I'll first of all start by explaining, what is the destination of any plastic waste. So there are three primary destinations for any plastic waste. One is the landfill, second is incineration, and third is, of course, recycling. So when we talk of landfill, almost 50 to 60% of plastic reaches landfill, 20 to 25% is incinerated, and close to 15% is being recycled. So that's the state right now in terms of recycling. And also, if you take, how much plastic are we using overall, which is recycled? So if you look at the total manufactured plastics, less than 5% is being recycled, which I believe is really a small number, especially, with the kind of green initiatives that we are seeing around the world, that should really improve.
Got it. So tell us, Neeraj, what, depending based on the kind of initiatives that various countries and chemical and energy companies are taking up, what's the percentage penetration that we could possibly reach in the short term? And in this case, short term perhaps would be 2030 or so. And then in the long term, which is around 2050, what are some, good aspirational targets?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to answer your previous question on what are the most troublesome plastics.
Yes.
So if you look at, carbon footprint is not the only parameter to judge that. I think the volume and frequency at which plastic is reaching the landfills, that is also a very critical parameter to measure that. And almost 70% of the single-use plastic, which we use and throw, is right now reaching the landfills. So that's very critical part. And also from a carbon footprint standpoint, you have PVC, you have PET, you have HDPE, you have LDPE. So these four plastics account for almost 630 million tons of carbon dioxide almost in the last year. And if we recycle these four, we can reduce the carbon footprint by 50%. And if we account also for single-use plastics, so polystyrene, polypropylene will also fall here. Polystyrene is a normal styrofoam that you see, in your electronic packaging, in your cups. Now, a very small portion of that is also being recycled. So these five, I would say, are the culprits which need to be, dealt with first. So that is the answer for the question on the carbon footprint point. Now, when I look at the state of the art, so right now, we are not recycling as much as I explained previously. But if we look at, by 2040 onwards, the recycling rates can double, and which will mean that, you would not need almost 20% of the crude oil will not be required. So almost 30% recycling rates can be arrived, by 2040, which means that the action has to start now. The petrochemical companies need to start acting now. And if you move still ahead in the future, we believe that by 2055, post 2055, based on our research, we will be using more than 50% of the plastic that we use today would be recycled. So I think the action has to start now, if they really want to see a good future, or they want to survive, let me put it that way.
I think that's a good way to put it. So Neeraj, you did mention about the action has to start now, but we're still talking about very long time frames. We're talking about 15, 20 years out, right, at the least.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about which countries are really leading this charge and how are they doing it? What are the types of regulations? What is working? What is not working? If you could just tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So this is a very interesting research that we did. So we evaluated. So let's look at, what are now this is a very regulation driven market. You can't, work without the regulations in place. And when we observed, the global scenario, and we observed various regulatory approaches, there are two primary approaches, although there are others. There is one as economic instruments where you levy taxes or you provide incentives. The other is, of course, banning. So what we observed, the countries where the ban was prominent and the economic instruments were less enforced, they had lesser recycling rates. While if you look at Europe, they had, they are sort of epitome when it comes to, implementation of the economic instruments. So they have more countries that have implemented economic instruments than bans. And if you look at the recycling rates, it's more than 30%. So I think the economic instruments have to be levied really wisely, if you want to achieve something in this particular market. And just to elaborate on how successfully this can be implemented, I think Germany is a perfect example. For example, one of the systems that really worked for Germany was the green dot system. Now, what's the green dot system? Now, before I explain green dot system, I'll explain another aspect, which is a very critical aspect of the whole recycling value chain and where the maximum efficiency loss occurs. So it is within the sorting and the segregation part. Now, in Germany, an average household has 5 separation dustbins. So at the household itself, the segregation is being done. So that adds to the efficiency of the overall process. So you have a separate bin for plastics, you have separate bin for metals, you have separate bin for glass. So the segregation is being done at the household level. Now, in the early 90s, Germany did not have, they were all the landfill sites were overflowing. So they did not have place to put or dump their waste. So that's where the government came into action, and a consortium of industry, which encompasses waste collection companies, recycling companies, and also the user industries like the plastics and packaging. So they came together and they created a system which is known as a green dot system. Now, if you have to have a green dot on your product, you need to pay a fee. And that fee is dependent on the amount the weight of the material that you put in the market. And just to elaborate how successful this system was, a yogurt tub which weighed almost 7 to 8 grams in early 90s, today that same yogurt tub weighs around 3 to 4 grams. So in order to lessen the burden on the kind of licensing fee they had to pay, the manufacturer reduced the production. And another system that really worked, which is at a common consumer level, people, you drink a bottle of cold drink or juices, and they have a system called FAND, which starts with the word P. It's a FAND system. So there are deposit machines that are installed in supermarkets, on the roads. Anyone can go and deposit these bottles, and you can get a reward, 25 cents per bottle. And I think this has also been implemented in a lot of European states. So these are one of the very successful things. And also from the industry responsibility standpoint, if you look at a company like Schwartz, which is a retail store. Now, this retail store is integrated. It owns its own waste handling. It collects, it recycles. So you see that the company owning the retail store is sort of backward and forward integrated. So such kind of things, when we look at, that's what really made Germany successful.
I think these are some fantastic examples and in case situations to learn from for a lot of other countries. So Neeraj, tell us a bit more about the end use industries. I mean, a lot of the recycled plastics push is going to come because of the demand, or rather the pull coming in from the end use industries as well. So which are the end use industries leading this charge, and literally forcing the chemical companies to embrace recycled plastic? Could you talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah, so if you look at, by 2030 or 2035, we expect the recycled plastic market would be close to $95 billion. And the leading the charge here would be close to 56% would be packaging, and mainly driven by, e-commerce, barrier film packaging, medical packaging. So those will be the driving forces, followed by automotive, which will be close to 16-17% of the market. And especially when we look at, Mercedes or BMW, now they are enforcing rules like putting recycled plastic in the car. Similarly, followed by infrastructure, things like smart cities, 5G infrastructure, they will also account for close to 16% of the market, and the rest being manufacturing, like electronics or aerospace. So that's what we see as the companies that, or the industry that will be leading the charge.
It's very interesting. So now if we were to try and visualize and put ourselves in the shoes of a chemical company, right, which has to, most large companies, chemical companies are anyway undergoing this change. But, what are the key strategic decisions that they would need to take? So for instance, one thought that comes to my mind is they would need to decide on which technologies to bet on. And I know most of them are currently focusing on mechanical recycling. Perhaps they would need to move a lot more towards chemical recycling. And then the big question could be which technologies to bet on. So if you could tell us a bit more about how you see this share of mechanical versus chemical changing, and the technologies.
Sure. So before I answer that, I'll just explain briefly, what is the technology landscape like. Right now, there are two primary categories of technologies, which is mechanical and chemical. When we say mechanical, it's just you collect the waste, you wash it, you shred it, you remold it, you shred it, you convert into pellets, and then you remold it. So that's the mechanical recycle, which is close to 85-90% of the market right now. And after that, this is chemical. There is chemical recycling. Within chemical recycling, there are 3 to 4 primary technologies like pyrolysis. You have depolymerization, and then you have gasification, and also there is an ancillary process which is solvent purification. Now, if you look at the major portion is occupied right now by pyrolysis. The pyrolysis is nothing but you heat it at a very high temperature of 700-800 degrees in the lack of oxygen, and you get a pyrolytic oil. And right now, of course, there is research being done, and then you purify that oil. Of course, the objective is to arrive at a substitute of crude oil. However, present state of technology does not allow that. We are not seeing polymers being manufactured by that pyrolytic oil. Most of that pyrolytic oil is actually being fed into as an energy source, as a fuel, in the cement kilns or other energy intensive processes. In a way, it's also again contributing back to the carbon footprint. So we believe pyrolysis is not the answer. It's not the elixir to this solution. But we look at technologies like depolymerization. Also, when you look at gasification, now gasification potentially, you heat it at again higher temperatures and you make syngas, which is basically carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Now, this is something that is getting popular, that it could be a source of hydrogen, but right now it's not been exploited that much, and also this will not be a green hydrogen, but definitely an alternative hydrogen source. And one of the other things that we think is most promising is depolymerization. So depolymerization is when you go back to the monomers. So you break the polymer chain and you go back to the polymers. Now you have chemical depolymerization and you have biological, where you use enzymes and microbes to go back to polymers. So depolymerization, we believe, should take up good portion of the market if we have to reach at a level where more than 50% of the total market is recycled plastic. And also the depolymerization cost has to come down almost by 30 to 40%, which is quite expensive at this point. And also one other very promising technology which we see again under depolymerization is enzymatic hydrolysis. Now that also we believe by within the decade or so, it should also be recycling close to 1 kt of plastics, and we're looking at something of $1 billion market by in a decade or say 15 years time. So I think that should be the way forward for companies to look for within the technology space.
That's good perspectives in terms of where to place bets. So let's also try and visualize what might be the other ecosystem players, in this entire recycled plastic ecosystem. And what do you see as the biggest revenue growth opportunities for them because of this tectonic shift happening on minimizing single-use plastic?
So let's understand one thing, as I pointed previously also, the step where the most of the efficiency loss is occurring is the sorting or the waste management. So I think the waste management is an area which has to come up, and there has to be a lot of alliances between the petrochemical players and the recycling players in order to capitalize on or to reduce this loss. And so I believe these two parts are very important, and also we are seeing a lot of activity there. Recently we saw Landel Bessel has partnered with Sears in Germany, where they are jointly creating a plastic recycling facility. ExxonMobil is also working with Agilix, which is a technology company. And also one of the areas which I feel would be really effective would be digitization or 4IR aspect, where technology can be used in terms of intelligently sorting of the material so that the sorting and segregation losses can be reduced. And if you look at from the market opportunity perspective, we believe that by 2030, 45 to $50 billion market is available for technology players, and a majority of which, close to 35 billion dollars will be with the actual recycling technology providers. And I think the waste management or sorting technology side, we believe the opportunity will be close to 10 to $15 billion within the decade or so. So that's what our findings are around.
That is superb. Thank you so much, Neeraj. I think it's been great chatting up on a very interesting topic. Not only do we believe there is significant revenue growth opportunity for chemical, petrochemical, and other companies, but I think the most important thing is that this is going to be for a very good social cause and a social good for all of us and our next generations as well. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Neeraj. Thank you so much for this sharing these perspectives.
Thank you very much, Ashish, for inviting me. It's been a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.